declaration by the governor of Nasarawa State when he visited the presidency that there is a deployment of Boko Haram insurgents to the boundary between Benue and Nasarawa State. As a result of this, we in Benue State, using our security agencies, decided to swing into action to find out the truth or otherwise of that declaration. Of course, given the exalted position that the governor of Nasarawa State occupies, we have no doubt at all, no reason whatsoever to doubt his declaration. In the meantime, while we are still investigating, we've been able to ascertain the fact that there appears to be a massive deployment of herdsmen with their cattle on the brink of River Benue, but on the bank, on the Nasarawa State bank. And we also observed that a good number of these herdsmen are heavily armed, many of them with AK-47 rifles. As if this was not enough, we've been able to apprehend a good number of them in a village called Casio in Guma local government of Benue State. On the 23rd of January, 156 cows belonging to these herdsmen were apprehended. And on the 26th of this month, another 220 cows were apprehended from the same vicinity. And it was observed that the herdsmen were not the ordinary herdsmen because they were heavily armed. Of course, their cows, in keeping with the anti-open grazing law of Benue State, were apprehended and brought to the enclosure where we put them here, as you can see behind me. Now, I want to make it very clear that Benue State is a unit of the federating structure of Nigeria. And this unit, like all other units, are governed by laws of the state. Benue State has its own laws, one of which is the anti-open grazing law. We have been keeping to this law. As a result, we've been able to apprehend all the people that violated the laws.
Well, yes, we do have the Deputy Governor joining us now to shed some light on some of what you just heard there. It's Mr. Benson Abuonu, the Deputy Governor of Benue State. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Those were really serious matters that you have raised there about the information that came to you after the security meeting in the state about herdsmen who you say were deployed and they are heavily armed. First of all, could you tell us, when was this discovered after the Security Council meeting? When was this?
Well, thank you very much for having me. As a matter of fact, all this started when the governor of Nasarawa State made the statement that he made when he visited the president. And that was what actually pushed us to hold a Security Council meeting. And in the Security Council meeting, of course, as usual, we took briefs from all the security agencies. And the finding as at then, I cannot say, or we could not say precisely whether or not the people that were at the boundaries between Benue and Nasarawa states were actually Boko Haram insurgents. But what we found out at the time was that we had a massive number of herdsmen with so many cattle on the brink of the river. And as I talk to you, some of them are still on the bank of the river on the Nasarawa state side, overlooking Agatu local government area. And I know it has been their intention to cross over because we have a very rich fadama in Agatu local government area, and this is the place of choice for herdsmen to graze their cattle. We also have a good number of them overlooking Guma local government area. And as I told you, it is because of the alert that we got from the governor of Nasarawa state that necessitated the meeting that we held. And so that is what happened. And as I talk to you, we are still investigating. We have not yet gotten additional information as to whether or not Boko Haram insurgents are at the boundary of Benue and Nasarawa states.
Now, a couple of things coming up there. After that meeting, because one wonders, what is it that could have informed that movement after the meeting? What was said then? And then when you say they were deployed, was it also as a result of that meeting? Who could have deployed them?
How could it have been as a result of the meeting? Of course, the herdsmen deployed themselves there. We all know that they do not have houses or residences in Benue or in Nasarawa state. These are people that are homeless, so to say. And we know that they have come from the far north. We've been told in the past that they are not even Nigerians, that they have come from neighboring countries. They are nomads, and because perhaps of desert encroachment and other weather hazards, they decided to come to the place of choice, as I said. We're in a vegetative area in Benue State, and that is why they keep coming. And whoever are their masters must have deployed them, because you will agree with me that herdsmen are not necessarily the owners of the cattle. The herdsmen are usually employees of the owners of the cattle. And clearly, it's those owners that must have deployed them down here. That's precisely what I meant.
So have you notified any of the security authorities, maybe the DSS, the presidency, about these findings from Security Council meeting?
The security agencies are all aware, and they are the ones that have even been feeding us with the information. Of course, they have their leaders and their bosses in Abuja, and they make daily reports to their headquarters. So I can say that Abuja is aware. It is the duty, of course, of the headquarters to let the presidency know. But it is not strange at all that we have these herdsmen surrounding the eastern axis of Benue State and down to the southern part in Agatu area. So honestly, I think this is a fact that is known to everybody.
Well, when you say that you have been told by some sources that they are from outside of Nigeria and they are right now located between Nasarawa and Benue State, I'm wondering how long it took them to migrate and how come government wasn't aware of this? Because if we look at the map of Nigeria, before any country, anyone can come in from the north of Nigeria into Benue State, the person will have to pass through at least 3 states, Katsina, Kano, and Kaduna, before they will get into Nasarawa and then Benue State. So from your findings, do you have any idea what the pattern of the travel is and how come we didn't know this ahead of time?
Well, number one, I cannot speak for the security agencies, particularly the DSS, but it is a known fact. It is known to all Nigerians that herdsmen are nomadic in nature. And every day you see them from one area of Nigeria to another. Only day before yesterday, I was reading a report that cited the governor of Kano State, who himself is a hardcore Fulani person, and who reasons on the issue of Fulani herdsmen clashing with farmers very dispassionately. He's somebody I'm so proud of whenever he talks about what to do with herdsmen and their cattle. You know, we should be dispassionate about this. And there should be no emotional attachment. We have a national crisis that borders on the lives of Nigerians. And that is why we in Benue State, we passed the anti-open grazing law, which aims primarily at separating the business of rearing cattle and animal husbandry as a whole from crop production. Because if you rear cattle, for example, in an enclosure, it means the cattle will not sway into farmlands to destroy the crops of farmers, which ordinarily is always responsible for the clash between farmers and herders. And so what I'm trying to tell you is that everybody sees them, and therefore, when you see them, because they say they have a right, a fundamental constitutionally approved right to herd their cattle from one part of Nigeria to the other, people see them. And so it's not a matter of not knowing ahead of time. We see them every day and they move around. But when they come, and they come in very large numbers, and the herders themselves are armed, that is where the problem is. And that is where we are concerned. That is the security aspect of what we are talking about.
Well, that leads to this question, Your Excellency, the fact that historically, I mean, herdsmen only carried staff and sticks and all of that to guard their cattle wherever it is that they go. But with herdsmen in large numbers going around with heavy arms such as AK-47, it's indicative in a way some failure of intelligence on the part of the DSS. Would you say it is a failure of intelligence on the part of the DSS?
I would not. No, I would not say that at all. And I am telling you this from an informed position. Having been a deputy chairman of Security Council for 5.5 years now, I can tell you that the DSS has always been discharging its duties diligently. But the follow-up is the issue, especially when crimes are seen to have been committed and nothing seriously appears to happen in terms of bringing to book the perpetrators of the crime. And so people therefore tend to continue to commit the crimes with ignominy. This is where the problem is. The information has always been there. The follow-up, I would say, is a problem.
So, I mean, a lot of issues stick out. First, in terms of follow-up, at whose table is this follow-up and what are they meant to do specifically now?
You're asking me a question I believe you know the answer to.
But you've not answered the question still.
If you want me to say, the internal security of any nation lies with the police. It lies with the police. And I can even tell you that it does not lie with the military. But of course, if the police is overstretched and appears to be overwhelmed, especially in terms of numbers and equipment, then of course the commander-in-chief of the country can ask for help from the military, which is exactly what has been happening in Nigeria.
Okay. I mean, now that that is cleared, you mentioned something really vital to all of this. I mean, you started by, referencing the governor of Nasarawa State, his visit to the nation's capital, to the president, the statement he made about Boko Haram at the borders. And now you say that those herdsmen are overlooking Benue State. You mentioned Agatu, Guma local government areas. Areas that share, I mean, that's the border with Nasarawa State, basically saying that the Nasarawa State government has a major role to play in this. So I believe there has been some form of interface. What are you telling the Nasarawa State government? What do you expect them to do with these herdsmen?
Well, let me tell you one good thing about all this. In the previous administration of Nasarawa State, we interfaced a number of times with that administration. 2 times we held what we called dual state security meetings, that is interstate security meetings. And the entire Security Council of Nasarawa State, the entire members, and the entire members of the Security Council of Benue State held joint meetings, one in Nasarawa State, another one in Benue State, and we held a number of other meetings between our security agencies. The idea was to synergize and work together, because the truth is, if Benue is fighting the criminality arising from herdsmen and farmers, and Benue is doing it alone without the support of Nasarawa State, obviously there will be no success. Because if they are driven away from here, they will find succor in Nasarawa State and vice versa. And therefore, what needs to happen is, if the criminals know that they have no place to run to, then it will be very easy to handle them. And so we've been doing that. In the present administration, not quite 2 months after Governor Sule took office, he called for a joint Security Council meeting. And we held that meeting in the border town of Yelewata in Benue State. And all the Security Council members, even plus traditional rulers, were present. And some very, very vital decisions were taken. And we made it very clear. In fact, Governor Sule made it very clear to the people present that Benue State has a law on anti-open grazing, and that nobody should use Nasarawa State as a launching pad to go and commit crimes in Benue. And that helped a lot. But you see, even though our law in Benue State has tremendously succeeded in keeping at bay the clashes between farmers and herders, we still have rudiments, and people crossing over and causing problems here and there, of course, on a limited level till today. And that is why when we heard him saying that Boko Haram insurgents have massed themselves at the bank, or rather at the boundary of Benue and Nasarawa State, we got worried, because we have been enjoying some relative peace, and we don't want to go back to what happened in 2017 and 2018.
Well, Your Excellency, listening to you, many are getting that impression that it appears as though the police is looking the other way while all of these things happen, while they go around with AK-47, because normal citizens, you cannot, you should not. If you're found with an AK-47, you will be arrested. So, haven't talked about how impressed you are with Kano State Governor, the meeting that was held, Nasarawa State Governor briefing the president. Is it a bad idea, or do you think that perhaps one of the next steps should be this discussed at the NGF so that governors can collectively, since different states are having some challenges with this, is this something that you think it should be tabled at the Governors Forum meeting so that they can come to a solution and agree on how to proceed with this? Because, I mean, it was reported that the president met with some governors and they said, well, people should obey the laws.
Well, let me clear and let me correct one impression. The police have not been looking the other way, and I never said so. But I can assure you that the police are trying their best. The unfortunate situation is that the police is overstretched. I don't need to say this. Everybody knows it. The number is not there. Even the number of the personnel is not enough. If I tell you that in a whole local government, you will have just about 5 police officers, some 10, you'll be surprised. This is where the problem is. So they're overstretched. As you are calling on one police officer to tackle one issue here, 10 other issues are taking place elsewhere that require his attention. And that is why he cannot cope. Of course, I'm happy that the presidency is rising up to this, because 2 years or so back, 10,000 were recruited. And I understand there's another process of recruitment going on now. That's the way to go about it. But having said that, yes, I am very impressed with the governor of Kano State, because dispassionately he said, please stop this nomadic nature of the movement of cattle from the north to the south. Find a place of abode for them and let them do modern business of animal husbandry. In other words, ranching, which is what Benue has been advocating since 2016, and which is working fairly well in Benue. The ranches in Benue may not be first class international, but they serve the purpose. There is an enclosure, you put the cattle there, and then you go and look for their feed and bring to them. Of course, they have advantages, because as the cattle don't move about, they are not fatigued. They put on more flesh, and they produce more milk, and they put more money on the hands of the breeders. And so I am very, very, very impressed with Governor Ganduje. I've had personal discussions with him in the past. And I remember one day he told me he tended to cattle for about 9 years, even before he went to school. He's a full-bred Fulani person. And so he understands that business. And he knows the difference between this nomadic nature and modern way of breeding cattle. I think we should listen to him, and I think the authorities should listen to him. Well, now, coming to the Nigerian Governors Forum, which you talked about, I will not be telling you the truth if the matter had not been tabled before the forum before. Especially the security issues arising from herdsmen, farmers clashes. These are issues that have been discussed a number of times at the Nigerian Governors Forum. And that is why you have some concerted efforts in trying to put to rest some of the crises.
Yeah, Your Excellency, part of what we're trying to raise is because, I mean, people get feedback from everywhere. And part of what they were suggesting is that the impression they get is such that, I mean, if they saw all over the dailies that the police issued an order to certain persons following that fracas and misunderstanding, according to the NGF, that the press misrepresented the message from Ogun, on those states. But they haven't equally seen the same approach in arresting persons who are moving around with AK-47. That's the impression they get.
Yeah, well, what exactly are you asking of me now?
Because at the moment, perhaps you should tell us, how is the Benue State Police Command responding to this? Did you make any arrest of any of those people other than the cows that were arrested?
Very well, very well. If you watched, the clip that you showed of me at the beginning of this session, I don't think you went to that extent, but I did mention that of 356 cows were apprehended, and that 6 herdsmen who were armed were arrested and handed over to the police for prosecution. The police in Benue has done a pretty good job, especially in keeping our anti-open grazing law. A good number had been arrested in the past. They were given very fair trial, and some of them were sent to correctional centers, while others paid fines. And as of today, we also have the livestock guards that are all over the place to ensure that you only breed your cattle in ranches in Benue. And those who flouted the law have always been arrested, and if they paid the fine, they were let go. But those who did not pay the fine, and especially if they also committed other crimes, then they're handed over to the police, and the police has done a pretty good job by prosecuting them.
Well, when you say that they are currently at the banks overlooking the area, that will certainly raise a lot of concern to people who are living around those areas and even in those states and even the country at large. So at the moment, have those, because you equally said that people, the owners of the cows, employ those herdsmen to move around, has there been anyone who claimed to own those cows reach out to yourself or the Benue State authorities about those cows? And then is there anything going on in Nasarawa State now to ensure that they don't move further or they're apprehended? Because if you say they are currently there now.
Yes, the owners of the cows will come in contact with a good number of them. And that happens when we arrest, when we apprehend the cows. And of course, the small boy who tends to the cows will now report to the owner. And the owner comes up, and it is the owner that we deal with. He's the one who pays the fine. And so, yes, it is true. We've been in touch with the owners, and we've been preaching to them. The Benue State has nothing against the breeding of cows. But we are saying that the best international practice in breeding cows is ranching, using ranches. And a good number of them are buying the idea. Don't forget also that the cow breeders are not only Fulani people. We have Benue indigenes who also breed cows. I'll give you a typical example. The first cousin of Senator David Mark, former Senate President, Shifakatu, breeds cows in Otukpo. And of recent, you will not believe it, he has a ranch. So when the cows swayed out of his ranch and were seen in the open grazing, they were apprehended. And he came to Makati, and we made him to pay the fine. So the thing is working very well. I am surprised that it's taking such a long time for other states in the Federation to borrow the leaf from Benue. What is happening in Oyo and Ondo states today would not be happening if they had come on board with us in 2016 or thereafter. I think this is a national issue and should be looked at dispassionately by all sectors of Nigeria. We are not against anybody. As for Nasarawa State, I cannot speak for Nasarawa State, but I know interfacing with them and interacting with them, I know that they are equally concerned. I told you earlier that the governor told his people that Benue has a law on against open grazing, and they should not use Nasarawa State as a launching pad. Because what used to happen in the past is that they would cross over the river Benue. You know, cows swim very well. And then they come to Benue and graze, and we begin to run after them. Then they cross the river again and go back to Nasarawa State. And they've been looking at taking Nasarawa State to be a safe haven. But this is what we must stop, because there has to be synergy, yes, and concerted efforts between the states.
Okay, as we wind down now, any moment from now, two issues. First is Benue State offering ranches, because you talked about that idea. Are you offering ranches to the herders who might want to, key into it? Are you saying, well, we have ranches so you can register and pay for it? And also, what happens to those cows now? I mean, numbering over 300 of them that have been apprehended, as you said. So what happens to the cows?
No, once the fines are paid, they are released to them. I think they must have been handled already, because over a week now. So there's no issue there. With regards to the state having state ranches, let me take you back to history. Long ago, the federal government of Nigeria had established ranches. A major one was in Mokwa, in Kwara State. There's a major one somewhere in Ogun State. And we had a very big ranch in Zaria. And they were run by the state. Even Benue State, during the regime of Aperako, had a major ranch here in a place called Ikyoge. And they were running very well. But of course, as you very well know, most government concerns fell by the wayside. And not only the Ikyoge cattle ranch of Benue State, but also the cattle ranches built by the federal government fell by the wayside. Simply because in modern days, government businesses have not been successful. And so government decided to hands off. And therefore, sorry?
If you don't mind, because we're really running out of time now. Well, you said that this is a national problem. And true to type, because a good number of states have been raising issues about, Fulani herdsmen, but then many people always ascribe the Fulani end to them. What are you expecting the president to do, since it is a national problem? What are you expecting the president or the federal government to do about this matter?
Well, the president has been doing a lot, especially through the vice president. If you remember, there is the new way of looking at producing meat for Nigeria. And a lot has been done in this respect. So much of planning, but we are waiting to see how it is practiced. Of course, a number of issues came up that the people rose against, like the Ruga, for example. But if it comes to doing the transformation of animal business, which the federal government has embarked upon, that will be acceptable to Nigerians, provided they are done through ranching. And let me tell you also that animal breeding is a private enterprise. It's a private business like all other businesses. Government can only provide the enabling environment. Or government cannot go ahead and say, look, let me do your business for you. And that is why we're a little bit skeptical about the government establishing ranches and asking people to come and breed their cattle in. But anybody who wants to breed his cattle can come to Benue and ask for, if he finds a piece of land, he can ask for it, and we'll give him a certificate of occupancy, and then he can build his ranch and tend to his cattle there.
All right, Your Excellency.
This is what we...
Okay, well, we do thank you for your time this morning, Your Excellency Benson Abonu, Deputy Governor of Benue State.